I'm so excited today because when we have picnics after church, I get to wear shorts. That is the best part of picnics. I want to talk for a moment about plants, if that would be okay. I have a love-hate relationship with plants. Does anyone else have a love-hate relationship with plants? I want to be good at caring for plants. I want to be one of those people where people come over to my house and they say, "Oh, look at all of your nice plants." But I'm not very good at keeping them alive. Does anybody have this problem? I'm like really bad at it. I have a dwarf palm that I love, which is a palm tree that grows shorter. But it's the third one I've had in 3 years. And from what I understand, they're very hard to make die. But I've managed to kill 2 prior to this. When I lived in New York, a friend of mine once asked me to care for his indoor herb garden while he was in Africa. And I said, no problem. How hard can it be? But the longer he was gone, the worse this herb garden started looking. And so I got a little panicky and I decided to improvise. So I was in his kitchen there looking for things to put in the plants to help them grow. And on top of the refrigerator, he was a gym person, he was a weightlifter. I saw this jug of powder that people take before or after going to the gym that helps them grow muscle and things like that. And because I'm a genius, I thought, well, I'm a living thing. A plant is a living thing. If this helps humans grow, certainly it will help plants grow. So I mixed some up and I poured it in there. And the next day when I came back, things were not holding on. They were just dead. Everything was just hanging over the edges. And not only that, I think that it might have had dairy in it or something. So his entire apartment smelled like rotting cottage cheese. It was the worst thing ever. So before he got back, I went to the store. I replaced all of his herbs. I don't think he ever knew. But it cost me like $100. Anyway, my point is today, I suck at plants. I am not good at it. I even managed to kill a cactus once. How do you kill a cactus? What's that? Well, I did a great job of it. So our passage for today is a passage about plants of all things, growing them, maintaining them. It says this, it's from the Gospel of John. I am the true vine and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit he prunes so that it will be even more fruitful. You are already clean because of the word I have spoken to you. I am the vine, you are the branches. If a man remains in me and I in him, he will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. Remain in me, and I will remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. If anyone does not remain in me, he is like a branch that is thrown away and withers. Such branches are picked up and thrown into the fire and burned. It's so beautiful till it gets to that last verse. And then it's like, where is this going? The society of Jesus' time was largely agrarian. Scholars believe that between 80 and 90% of the culture that Jesus was living inside of and the region he was living in made their living from agriculture. So Jesus naturally often taught what he taught through these metaphors of farming and gardening so that the people of his region would understand the teachings better. And whether you are like me, knowing nothing about plants, or you are like the people in this story who know everything about plants, one thing is for certain. If a plant doesn't grow, it's not the plant's fault. If a plant isn't growing, it's not the fault of the plant. If my dwarf palm stops growing and starts dying, it's not the dwarf palm's fault. Whose fault is it? It's mine. Plants only know how to grow. That's all they do. If their surroundings are right and nothing gets in their way, they just thrive. It's really simple. Sometimes at night when it cools down, I like to get my walk in around Bethesda. And because I'm an introvert, I don't like walking where there are people. So I know all of the alleyways through Bethesda. And I was going through this familiar alleyway the other night, and there was this modernist / brutalist structure that had a balcony, and the whole thing is made out of pressed concrete. There's not any cracks or mortar or bricks or anything like that. It's just all pressed concrete. And on this balcony, there were two little drainage holes where if it rained, water could drain off the balcony. And out of this drainage hole was this, not like a weed, but like a plant with a stalk that was growing completely out of this concrete, or at least it looked like that. That's just how plants are. If they can grow, they will grow. It's not their fault if they're not growing. Now, Jesus in this passage says that God is like a gardener. He says, my Father is the gardener. And then Jesus says, I am like the vine. And then he says, and you are like the branches. There is something at the top of that chain of nourishment, at the top of that chain of responsibility. And it's not you, and it's not me. It is God. And this is what Jesus wants his hearers to realize in this teaching. May be familiar to some of us. You do not have a spiritual growth problem. You only have a connection problem. If you are connected to the right thing, if you are in the right surroundings, because you are a branch that produces fruit, you will grow. And I think this is one of the hardest things for us to realize in our world, especially those of us that are church goers, temple goers, mosque goers. We think that spiritual growth is the problem. And so we focus all of our time and our attention on spiritual growth, but paying no attention to the connection that actually makes us grow. Jesus says, if you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. If that is the case, then let me ask you something. Why are you trying to do so much? Because you can't do anything to help God along. Your only responsibility is to maintain a connection. Jesus says, remain in me and I will remain in you. Other translators translate this word remain as abide, as dwell. No branch can bear fruit by itself. God is the gardener. Jesus is the vine. We are the branches. Are you trying to bear fruit by yourself? That might be why it's not working. That might be why the fruit that you do produce tastes so bad. This is why our connection to God, above all else, is so important. Because God is the only place in existence that all life comes from. God is the only place where growth comes from, where inspiration comes from. So the question isn't, what can I do to grow? Rather, it's, what can I do to strengthen my connection to that which causes me to grow? And the answer to that question, as Jesus tells us, is maddening. What can you do? Nothing. All you can do is nothing. Remain, abide, dwell. All you can do is say yes or no to it. You can surrender to it, or you can resist it. You want to know a prayer that will completely destroy a dormant spiritual life? Do not pray this prayer unless you want things starting to happen. Every morning when you wake up, and every night before you go to bed, even if you don't mean it, pray the words, God, help me to want what you want. God, help me to want what you want. And even if you only mean it just a little bit, God will meet you right there. And things will start happening in your life. Some of them amazing, some of them awful. And then you'll look back on those amazing things and you'll actually go, oh, that was the awful thing. And you'll look back on the awful thing and you'll go, oh, that was the good thing. I learned something there. God will start messing with your life if you pray this simple prayer. Islam says it this way: I am just as my servant thinks I am. I am with him if he remembers me. If he remembers me in himself, I too remember him in myself. And if he remembers me in a group, I remember him in a group that is greater than they. And if he comes one span nearer to me, I go 1 cubit nearer to him. And if he comes 1 cubit nearer to me, I go a distance of 2 outstretched arms near to him. And if he comes to me walking, I go to him running. This is what the source of growth is like. All you have to do is just barely consider it, and it will start working in your life. One of my favorites, this old 14th century text called The Cloud of Unknowing. They don't even know who wrote it, but it's one of my favorite books. It says the same thing in a different way. For I tell you this, one loving, blind desire for God alone is more valuable in itself, more pleasing to God and to the saints, more beneficial to your own growth, and more helpful to your friends, both living and dead, than anything else you could do. Blind desire. Think about what that means. It's like a blind person go, I want this, but I don't know where it is. That's all that God wants from you. To just grope around saying, where are you? What is keeping me from doing more of that in my life? What's keeping you from doing more of that in your life? What's keeping us from that? And you might be thinking, but Ryan, honestly, I don't even think I believe in God. It doesn't matter. That's okay. You don't have to believe in someone else's version of a thing. Maybe you're still searching for your version. Just keep searching, because truly, I promise you, the search is the same as the belief itself. Once we start believing, we just continue searching anyway. This is why Jesus said, seek and you will find. He didn't say, go find it. He said, seek. This is how people grow. This is how people have always grown, through our connection to a source that is connected to all of us. And when we all do that, the world starts to get a little bit better. Families start to get a little bit better. It's these little ways where we acknowledge who we really are to God and in relation to God. And we start taking back our power, not so that we can win, not so that we can dominate, not so that we can disseminate an ideology. But we begin to take our power back to love and to serve and to listen and do all of the things in this world that are quickly disappearing. Things like just tolerating one another. Like not talking back. Like taking the high road. That stuff comes from God. And all we have to do is connect to that in our thinking, with our hearts, with our motives. God, help me to want what you want. Pray it and watch a beautiful disaster unfold in your life. It's exactly what we all need. Let's pray. God, I like to think that I am a